Virgil loosened the knot on his tie before starting the car. The passenger seat still had the funeral program, his father's name on the cover, a photo from the early 70s, and a Bible verse he didn't read. The drive home from the church took 40 minutes. He didn't turn on the radio. 3 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, he decided it was time to clear out the spare bedroom. 4 banker's boxes in the back of the closet. The second box had an envelope he almost threw away. Inside, a pension statement with his father's name at the top. The company logo in the corner, the same company Virgil still works for. Monthly benefit, $2,800, guaranteed for life. For 22 years, Virgil put the paper down, opened his phone, pulled up his 401k, $185,000. He's looked at that number dozens of times and felt fine about it. Above the median for his age. Above most people he knows. But now, for the first time, he did the math his father never had to do. $185,000 at 4% is $7,400 a year, divided by 12. $617 a month. $617, his father got $2,800, same company, same building, different machine. And Virgil's number 617 doesn't include rent, doesn't include healthcare, doesn't include the 20 years the money needs to last. It's just what his savings produce if everything goes right. Keep Virgil in your head. We're coming back to him. But his story is not an exception. It's the median. And in a few minutes, I'm going to show you exactly how much Americans in every age bracket actually have saved for retirement, for singles, and for couples, the real numbers, not the averages the industry puts in headlines, and what those numbers turn into when the paycheck stops. If you've ever checked your balance and felt a quiet relief, the kind where you close the app and move on with your day, this video is the math behind what happens after you close the app. But first, I need to show you the machine. Because the machine Virgil's father stood on and the machine Virgil is standing on share the same name. They are not the same machine. I said they're not the same machine. Here's what I mean. For most of the 20th century, retirement in America worked like a conveyor belt. You showed up to work, you stood on the belt, and it carried you. The company put money aside on your behalf. Professional managers invested it. And when you turned 62 or 65, the belt delivered you to a guaranteed monthly check that lasted until you died. You didn't choose the contribution rate. You didn't pick the funds. You didn't manage the risk. The machine did it for you. That's the machine Virgil's father stood on. Now, here's the machine Virgil is standing on. It's called the same thing, a retirement plan, but it's a treadmill. You have to turn it on yourself. You decide the speed. You choose the incline. And if you stop running for any reason, the belt doesn't stop, you just fall behind. Think about that for a second. On the conveyor belt, the average worker didn't need to understand compound interest, didn't need to know what an expense ratio was, didn't need to make a single investment decision in 30 years of employment. The company hired actuaries and portfolio managers to do that. Your job was to show up and work. The retirement part was handled. On the treadmill, you need to understand all of it. Contribution rates, asset allocation, rebalancing, tax implications of withdrawals, Roth versus traditional, required minimum distributions, sequence of returns risk. And if you don't understand any one of those things, or if you understand them but just don't get around to acting on them, the machine doesn't compensate. It just keeps running. If you look at your savings right now and feel like you should be further ahead, that feeling is not a personal failure. It's a design outcome. The machine changed. Nobody sent a memo. And the people who were supposed to explain the new machine to you, the financial industry, had their own reasons for keeping it complicated. We'll get to that. There's a specific moment when it changed. A gear inside the machine was redesigned in the late 1970s. A single provision in the tax code, one section, one number transferred trillions of dollars in retirement risk from employers to employees. I'm going to show you exactly how that happened and what it cost. But first, the numbers. Because if Virgil's story felt personal, it should. He's not an outlier, he's a data point. And the data, when you separate what singles have from what couples have, when you stop looking at averages and start looking at medians, tells a story that most retirement articles are not designed to tell you. Here are the numbers. Not the averages, the medians, the midpoint. The number where half of America is above and half is below. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, here's what American households actually have saved in retirement accounts by age. Under 35, $18,880. 35 to 44, 45,000. 45 to 54, 116,600. 55 to 64, Virgil's bracket, 185,000. 65 to 74, 200,000. Now look at the averages for those same brackets. 55 to 64, $537,560. That's almost 3 times the median. The average is not lying. But it's not describing you. It's describing a room where one person has 3 million and 4 people have 100,000, and the average says everyone has 720,000. That's how wealth concentration distorts the number the industry uses in every headline. And those medians? They only count households that have something saved. 46% of American households have zero, nothing. No 401k, no IRA, no pension, zero. When you factor them in, the true median across all Americans drops dramatically. Half the country is operating without a retirement account at all. But the 401k numbers tell an even sharper story. According to Vanguard's How America Saves report, the average 401k balance across all participants is $167,970. Sounds reasonable. The median, the actual midpoint, is $44,115. That's a gap of almost 4 to 1 between average and median inside the same account type. Fidelity's data breaks it by generation. The average boomer 401k holds $267,900. Gen X, $217,500. These are the people closest to retirement, and their median balances are far lower than those averages suggest. Now, let's split this by singles and couples because the machine treats them very differently. 44% of single workers have a retirement account. Among married couples, it's 67%. That's not a small gap. It's the difference between a coin flip and a 2/3 chance. And it compounds. 2 earners means potential access to 2 employer plans, 2 sets of tax-deferred contributions, 2 matches. A single person gets 1 shot at each. 1 period of unemployment, 1 medical crisis, 1 gap in coverage, and the treadmill keeps running. Which brings me to Clayton and Norma. Married, 61 and 60. Both work. Both have a 401k. Combined household income around $90,000. Combined retirement savings, $210,000. On paper, they're ahead of Virgil. 2 incomes, 2 plans, $25,000 more saved. But watch what happens when you run the same math. $210,000 at 4% is $8,400 a year. Add their combined Social Security, roughly $35,000. Total retirement income, about $43,400. Their pre-retirement household income is $90,000. That's a replacement rate of 48%. Virgil, the single guy, replaces 50%. Clayton and Norma, the couple with more money, 2 jobs, 2 plans, replace 48%. The couple with more savings has a bigger gap. Because the gap isn't about the balance, it's about what the balance has to replace. And the target? Most financial professionals agree that you need to replace 70 to 80% of pre-retirement income to maintain your standard of living. Social Security was designed to cover roughly 40% for an average earner. The rest has to come from savings. For Virgil, that rest amounts to roughly $19,000 to $25,000 a year. For Clayton and Norma, it's $28,000 to $37,000. The couple needs almost double the savings income from a pot that's only $25,000 larger. The Schwab Modern Wealth Survey says Americans think they need $1.6 million to retire comfortably. The national median is $87,000. That's not a gap, that's a canyon. 18 times the distance. So why is it this wide? That's the piece most articles skip. They show you the numbers and tell you to save more, but they don't tell you why the numbers are this low in the first place. The answer isn't laziness. It's not financial illiteracy. It's engineering. Virgil has worked at the same company for 19 years. He's had a 401k since day one. He contributes 6% of his salary. His employer matches 3%. He never increased the contribution. Never changed the fund allocation. He's still in the default target date fund from 2007. He doesn't know the expense ratio. He's never looked. But here's the thing. None of that mattered for his father. His father didn't choose a contribution rate. Didn't pick funds. Didn't decide how much risk to take. The company ran a defined benefit pension, a DB plan. They put the money in, they managed it, and when his father retired, he got 60% of his final salary as a guaranteed monthly check, every month, for life. In 1980, 38% of private sector workers in America had a pension like that. By 2023, defined benefit plans had 11.1 million active participants. Defined contribution plans, the 401k system, had 93.4 million. In 1980, 64% of all private retirement contributions went into employer-managed plans. Today, more than 75% go into self-directed accounts. Accounts where you make the decisions, accounts where you carry the risk. The machine didn't break, it was replaced. And the replacement shifted trillions of dollars in financial risk from the institution to the individual without changing the name on the door. Your HR department still calls it a retirement benefit. It says so in the onboarding packet. But the word benefit is doing a lot of heavy lifting. A guaranteed pension was a benefit. A 401k is an option. Those are not the same thing. And here's what makes it personal for people like Virgil. He watched his father retire from the same company, watched him live comfortably for over 2 decades on that pension check. Virgil assumed, on some level, that his version of the deal would be roughly the same. Not identical, he knew pensions were disappearing, but similar enough. The same building, the same logo on the paycheck. How different could it be? The answer? Completely different. Virgil earns roughly $64,000 a year. If he'd had his father's pension 60% of final salary, he'd be looking at $38,400 a year. Guaranteed. Instead, his 401k produces $617 a month. The difference is about $2,600 a month. Not because Virgil didn't save, because the machine changed. If you're finding this useful, subscribe. The YouTube algorithm won't keep showing you these videos without that. I don't sell courses. I don't have affiliate links. The deal is simple. You watch, I make more of these. Keep Virgil in your head. There's one more gear inside this machine. And this one is the reason the gap doesn't just exist. It gets wider every year. You don't see it. You probably think the retirement crisis is about people who didn't save, who spent instead of invested, who chose the vacation over the 401k. That's the story the industry tells because it keeps the blame on you and the solution in their hands. But the data says something different. The crisis is not a behavior problem. It's a design problem. And it starts with one word: opt-in. In 1978, Congress passed the Revenue Act. Inside, it was a provision, Section 401, subsection K, that allowed employees to defer part of their salary into a tax-advantaged account. That sounds like a benefit, and it was. But it came with a design choice that changed everything. Participation was voluntary. You had to choose to enroll. You had to decide how much to contribute. You had to pick the investments. The old system didn't ask. The new system required you to raise your hand. Here's what that one design choice produced. In plans with automatic enrollment, where you're in unless you choose to opt out, participation rates hit 94%. In plans with voluntary enrollment, where you have to actively sign up, participation drops to 64%. Same people, same incomes, same access. The only difference is whether the default is in or out. That is not a motivation gap. That is not a knowledge gap. That is a checkbox. The old conveyor belt turned on the moment you walked into the building. The treadmill requires you to find the power button, choose the speed, set the incline, and keep running. Most people never find the button, not because they're careless, because the button was designed to be easy to miss. And it gets worse. 47% of private sector workers don't even have access to a workplace retirement plan. No button to find, no treadmill to step onto. Among workers in the same income bracket who do have access through an employer versus those who don't, participation rates collapse. When you have to open your own IRA with no payroll deduction, no employer match, no automatic anything, participation falls below 15%. Same income, different infrastructure, radically different outcome. Now come back to Virgil. He's one of the lucky ones he had access. But his plan used voluntary enrollment with a 3% default contribution. If his employer had used auto-enrollment with auto-escalation, the kind that starts at 3% and bumps up by 1% a year until it reaches 10, Virgil would have been contributing 10% for the last 12 years instead of 6. Run that difference through 19 years at 7% average annual return, and the gap is roughly $143,000, almost double what he has now. Not because Virgil would have tried harder, because the machine would have been set differently. One checkbox, $143,000. That's the price of voluntary enrollment for a single worker over a single career. And here's what's almost absurd about it. Congress knew. The data on auto enrollment has been overwhelming for over a decade. The Secure Act 2.0, passed in 2022, finally mandated auto enrollment for new plans starting in 2025. But that mandate only applies to plans created after the law passed. Every existing plan, including Virgil's, is exempt. The millions of workers already on the treadmill, they're still running on the old settings. Now consider Norma Clayton's wife. She stopped contributing for 7 years to raise their children. When she went back to work, it was for a smaller employer that didn't offer a retirement plan. Those 7 years off the treadmill, no contributions, no match, no compound growth, cost roughly $89,000 in lost accumulation. And Norma isn't unusual. Bureau of Labor Statistics data shows that women's careers include an average of nearly 12 years of reduced or interrupted earnings due to caregiving. Every one of those years is a year the treadmill kept running without them on it. The system doesn't have a pause button for people who take care of families. It just keeps going. And when you step back on, you're further behind than when you stepped off. But there's a third gear, and this one is the reason the gap becomes permanent if you don't catch it in time. The third gear is time, and the math is unforgiving. If you're 50 years old and you start contributing $500 a month to a retirement account earning 7% annually, you'll have roughly $152,000 by 65. Respectable. Not life-changing, but real. Now, delay that by 5 years. Start at 55 instead of 50. Same $500 a month, same 7%. By 65, you have roughly $87,000. You lost $65,000, not because you contributed less per month, but because you gave compound interest 5 fewer years to work. 43% of the total gone from 5 years. Delay by 10, start at 60, and you have roughly 36,000%. That's 76% less than if you'd started at 50. Same monthly effort, radically different outcome. The treadmill doesn't just keep running while you stand still. It speeds up. And once you've lost those years, there is no financial product, no investment strategy, and no advisor on earth who can give them back. Let me put that in a different frame so it sticks. If you're 55 and you put off starting for just 1 year, 12 months, and then contribute for 9 years instead of 10, the cost of that single year of delay is roughly $12,000 in lost growth. $12,000 for doing nothing for 12 months. That's $1,000 a month in invisible cost. You'd notice a $1,000 charge on your credit card. You wouldn't notice this because nobody sends you a bill for the money you didn't grow. Here's another way to see it. That $65,000 difference from a 5-year delay, that's more than the median 401k balance in America. 5 years of waiting costs more than what most people have saved in a lifetime. The machine doesn't punish you for failing, it punishes you for waiting. And here's the part that most financial content won't tell you because the people creating it have a reason not to. The average financial advisor charges roughly 1% of assets under management per year. On Virgil's $185,000, that's $1,850 a year. On $500,000, roughly, the average for his age bracket is $5,000. On the Schwab magic number of $1.6 million, it's $16,000 a year. The industry that tells you that you need $1.6 million to retire, the same industry that designs the benchmarks, publishes the surveys, runs. The calculators earns almost 9 times more in fees when you believe the number is $1.6 million than when you believe it's $185,000. I'm not saying advisors are useless. Some are excellent. But the incentive structure is visible if you look. The further behind you feel, the more likely you are to pay for help. And the more you pay, the more the industry earns. The system was not designed for you to fail. It was designed for you to need professional help and pay for it. Meanwhile, the National Personal Savings Rate tells its own story. In early 2024, Americans were saving 6.2% of their disposable income. By the first quarter of 2026, that number had dropped to 3.7%. Disposable income went up during that period. The savings rate went down. Americans are earning more and keeping less of it. The treadmill didn't slow down, it accelerated. And most people on it don't realize they're losing ground because the paycheck feels bigger even as the savings get smaller. The National Council on Aging found that 45% of Americans age 60 and older have incomes that are insufficient to cover basic needs, not luxuries, basics. And Pew Research projects that by 2040, 32.6 million retirement age households will have annual incomes below $75,000 with an average cash shortfall of $7,050 per year. That's not a hypothetical, that's a forecast built on the machine we're standing on right now. So where does that leave Virgil? Where does that leave Clayton and Norma? Where does that leave you? Let's go back to Virgil. $185,000 in his 401k. Social Security estimated at roughly $25,000 a year if he claims at 62. Total projected retirement income about $32,400 a year. His current salary $64,000. Income replacement rate 50%. At 50% replacement, Virgil has a gap of roughly $15,000 a year over 20 years of retirement. That's $300,000 in cumulative shortfall. That's the number nobody put in the green bar. But Virgil is 62, not 65. He has time, not a lot, but enough. Step 1. He increases his 401k contribution from 6% to 15% and adds the full catch-up contribution. In 2026, that means he can put up to $31,000 a year into the plan. Step 2. He delays Social Security from 62 to 67. Every year of delay past full retirement age increases his benefit by approximately 8%. 5 years of delay turns $25,000 into roughly $32,500. Step 3. He keeps working those 3 to 5 years, which means 3 to 5 more years of contributions, employer match, and compound growth with 0 withdrawals. The result: his account balance grows by approximately $95,000. His Social Security benefit increases by about 30%. His new projected retirement income rises to roughly $43,500. Replacement rate 68%. Annual gap $3,800. Manageable, survivable, plannable. Now Clayton and Norma. Starting point: $210,000 combined. Replacement rate 48%. Gap roughly $19,600 a year. They have levers too. Norma opens an IRA and maxes the catch-up contribution $8,000 a year. Both maximize their 401k catch-ups. Over 4 years, their combined additional contributions plus growth add roughly $115,000 to their balance. And they optimize Social Security timing. Clayton claims at 62 to bring in early income, while Norma delays until 70, maximizing the higher of the two benefits for the longer-lived spouse. Combined replacement rate climbs from 48 to roughly 72%. Annual gap shrinks to about $2,100. Now here's the version nobody wants to hear, but the one that matters. If Virgil had done nothing, stayed at 6%, claimed Social Security at 62, retired next year, here's what his retirement looks like. $32,400 a year of income against roughly $52,000 in annual expenses. A shortfall of nearly $20,000 a year. His savings last about 9 years before they're depleted. At 71, he's living on Social Security alone, $25,000 a year. That's below the federal poverty line for a single adult in most states. That's the path of inertia. The path of closing the app and feeling fine, $300,000. That's the distance between the path Virgil was walking and the path he has available over 20 years. And the only thing that changed was the speed of the treadmill. 3 things. Specific, starting this week. Number 1, calculate your income replacement ratio before you do anything else. Go to ssa.gov/myaccount and pull your estimated Social Security benefit. Take your total retirement savings balance and multiply by 4%. That's the standard sustainable withdrawal estimate. Add those two numbers together and divide by your current gross annual income. If the result is below 70%, you have a measurable gap, and now you have a target to close. Do this as a single number. If you're married, do it again as a couple with combined figures. The two numbers will tell different stories. Virgil's told him 50%. Clayton and Norma's told them 48. Both numbers were invisible until they did the math. Number 2, check whether your treadmill is set to auto or manual. Log into your 401k and look for 2 settings: auto enrollment and auto escalation. If your contribution rate has been sitting at the same percentage for more than 2 years, it's on manual. Turn on auto escalation. Most plans let you increase by 1% per year automatically. The difference between contributing 6% and 10% of a $64,000 salary over 10 years at 7% average return with a 3% employer match is roughly $72,000. That's not discipline. That's not sacrifice. That's letting the machine carry you instead of running on it. Number 3, if you're 50 or older, treat catch-up contributions like an emergency tool because that's what they are. In 2026, workers 50 and older can contribute up to $31,000 to a 401k and up to $8,000 to an IRA. A married couple where both spouses have workplace plans can shelter up to $78,000 a year from taxes. Run that for 5 years at 7%, and you're looking at roughly $450,000. That's almost 3 times the national median, built entirely inside the window most people assume is too late. The window is not closed, but it is narrowing. And every year you wait, every year you leave the treadmill on manual, the math tilts further against you. Virgil is back in the spare bedroom. The banker's boxes are still there, but they're organized now. His father's pension statement is on the desk next to a legal pad with 3 columns of numbers written in pencil, his own numbers he understands for the first time. The machine his father stood on doesn't exist anymore. It carried a generation to retirement without asking them to learn a single thing about investing, contribution rates, or withdrawal strategies. That machine is gone. It's not coming back. But the machine Virgil is standing on, the one that asks you to run, to choose, to manage, that machine has levers. Most people never touch them. Not because they're hidden, because nobody told them the levers were there. The treadmill isn't going to stop. But now Virgil knows how fast he needs to run and for how long. The safest retirement I've ever seen wasn't built by genius. It was built by patience and by refusing to be impressed by the noise. It's going to be boring. It's going to work.